All right, it is Wednesday. It is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Welcome everyone to Office Hours. This is where you can get your fair share of weekly updates from everything around Intune, ConfigMgr, and more, and also where you can ask questions on pretty much any Microsoft-related topics. So, what's up, Andrew? How are things?
It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday afternoon, and we can say that since it's a 4-day week, we are easily halfway through it now.
That is true.
It's somehow been. I feel like even after these last 2 days, I've already worked 3 or 4 days this week. Oddly enough, funny how that works out sometimes, isn't it?
It is true. It is true.
But of course, so things are going well, but we do have some updates from the community that I'd be happy to share today.
All right. So you're saying I should display your screen. That's what you're saying.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah, here we are.
There we go. Thank you, sir. So first things first, I came across an update from James Robinson. He has been maintaining, along with a few other members of the community, the OpenIntuneBaseline. We've showcased here on Office Hours a couple of different times. And there were several updates to the Windows baseline, the Windows 365 baseline, and Mac OS. And you can see here he's actually switched to publishing releases for the Open Intune baseline, as well as additional change logs and README updates that I think are just going to help track this code and the baseline itself as this project progresses and matures. So this is really awesome stuff. It's really cool to see this project come together, not only from the technical standpoint, but seeing them utilize some of these GitHub features is really cool to me. So I wanted to make sure that we shared that. Another GitHub repo that I needed to share today is from Petri's Get-IntuneManagementExtensionDiagnostics script. We've referenced this script a number of times as well on Office Hours, and he put out a good update last week to make sure that the script is showing the new app workload log that we're seeing for Win32 apps with the latest version of the Intune management extension. So this now supports that broken out log file. Also noticed, not necessarily on the Intune side of things or whatever, but just kind of a fun update here for those of you using Microsoft PowerToys. There was a release for that yesterday. A couple of new features and fixes as well. I noticed that they added the new PowerToys workspace feature that I am interested in playing around with, which helps you customize the layout and things like that on your desktop. Normally I'm using, I've got a nice Dell ultra-wide monitor here, so I'm normally using their solution, but if I can switch to something like PowerToys, I'm going to give this a shot and see what this looks like. Another community solution I came across is from the Evotech blog. Love this little, the name of it, CleanupMonster. Nice little design here. Love the bright colors, gets your attention. Basically what CleanupMonster is here, and if you haven't been to his blog post, there are a ton of great PowerShell scripts here. But anyways, CleanupMonster is for cleaning up objects that are in Entra or Intune or even optionally Jamf, for example, or Active Directory. So this is another of many solutions that exist out there that will help you clean up some of these stale objects. I'm really liking some of these solutions that can reach into all of the various systems, because as you and I well know, Johan, we can end up with with an object for the same device across so many different directories and systems that we actually have to pay attention to. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I would say that it for me, it's pretty easy to forget about those things unless you're scheduling them or automating them. So any solutions that we have, I think, are a good thing that will help make our lives easier, keep our systems clean and healthy. This is great stuff. And last but not least, I would say you and I need to give a big shout out to our friend Gary Blok.
Way overdue, that domination and award for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I was so happy to see this yesterday. Gary, congratulations. This is way overdue, like Johan said. I know this has been a long road, but man, does this guy deserve it?
Yeah. That's great.
Yes. So that was all I had. But as you can see, even for a short week, it's been a busy week in our community.
Indeed, indeed. I did stumble across a few things. Let's see if I can get those shared over here. Dum-de-dum. Share screen. Entire screen and my second monitor. How about that? That looks
good.
Looks like a healthy dose of PowerShell too. Yeah, I've been working on a new release or new update with of PSD with Mr. Michael Nystrom. Spent a good chunk of the day with that one, preparing for the WP Ninja conference next week. Oh, sorry, the conference is not next week, but I'm leaving next week. I'm gonna visit the family in Sweden in between, so that'll be great.
Awesome.
But let's see. Over here, healthy dose of Twitter or X. Did you mention these settings last week, Andrew?
I don't remember mentioning these.
Anyway, that was
so.
that was a blog thread, a Twitter thread going on around this blog post or about this blog post earlier today. And I learned about some new register values that I haven't stumbled across before, mainly because they are kind of undocumented. But apparently that there seemed to be a need in certain scenarios to actually have them cleaned out or removed if you have troubles moving the workload from or over to Intune for software updates. So I figured that was worth mentioning. It was an interesting post to read. I'm going to just borrow that name so I get it together with a link for reference. Then I stumbled across a great little video from Stephen over at Rubik's. This one here. A short video on how you connect Power BI to data warehouse in Intune to collect data from that one. And he also showcased a dashboard from one of our frequently returning members or friends here at the office hours, and that is Janik Reinhard, whose blog post we have showcased many times over the 2 years we've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Then we stumble across this. Microsoft apparently had some sort of, I don't know if it was an internal or external event. I saw the common journalists on Twitter where Zach Bowden and others were tweeting, but it seems like they announced a good chunk of new hardware today. And that is always exciting.
Oh, yes.
So not just the original ARM-based devices, but also new hardware from AMD and Intel supporting Copilot PCs, basically having native hardware, native neural processes for speeding up AI features in Windows. And I'm assuming now in the upcoming 24H2 also. So according to the wording here, we can expect to see these AI experiences starting in November for Windows 11 here. So good stuff. There were also some hints about upcoming desktop versions of systems to get high performance. So we'll see about that as time goes by. But I think that was pretty cool.
Did I see you tweet something earlier about Snapdragon too? There are going to be some Snapdragon improvements or something.
Maybe.
I might have just seen it in passing. It's hard to tell.
I may have. And finally, there was a security patch for ConfigMgr released. This one here. And it appears that it's for every single ConfigMgr release. They released this, and it's intended to fix a CVE. There are no details about the CVE yet, at least not what I could find. But Brian Dam had a tweet about this, and basically it's about changing the service account from being just a local system accessing the database to being indeed a real service account. So there must be something since they released it, but I hope we'll be able to share more information as the days goes by here. But this one was just fresh off the press about 2 hours before we did the call today. But at least I wanted to mention it. That one should show up in your console shortly. So cool stuff there. All right. Do we have any questions?
We do. A couple of questions and comments. So it looks like we've got Matt joining us today. Hey, Matt. Good to see you back. And we've also got Benny joining us over on YouTube. So Benny is looking to move updates from ConfigMgr to Intune. Do we have any tips? Is it only GPO settings that he needs to remove, or is there anything in ConfigMgr as well, apart from moving the workload?
Okay, this one is yours.
So we have a couple of resources that we normally share around this topic. GPO, spot on. Make sure that with your GPOs, you're setting things that are, if you had GPOs that were disabling Windows updates or changing Windows updates, go ahead and set those back to not configured. That's one of the primary things. I also put together a blog post a while back that helps you. So when you make this change, for most devices, in my experience, I would say the change goes fairly smoothly as long as you are making those GPO changes and that sort of thing. But you will almost certainly have some devices that don't like that changeover. They simply don't want to get rid of their old settings that they have in their registry. So I've got a blog post here that I wrote up a little while back to help audit using CMPivot the registry keys that are likely to be affected by this, as well as a quick script just to fix those registry keys if they're not being set back properly. There is also a fantastic blog post by Ben Whitmore over on Patch My PC's blog on things to pay attention to. So this is specifically related to co-management and ScanSource. This is a very deep dive into the process, and I highly recommend reading through this if you are going to be going through that process of changing your Windows updates over to Intune. This is really fantastic stuff here. So Ben really points out a few of the gotchas, things to look out for. But I would say, Benny, you're spot on. Make sure you review those GPO settings first. And take a look at these blog posts. They should be able to help to get you on your way.
Brilliant. All right.
So just make sure to get these links copied off, and we'll get them posted. I love this comment over here on YouTube. Gary finally being an MVP is like when Leo finally got his Oscar. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Oh, that's too funny. Matt's got a question here for us around Jason Sandy's startup script for the ConfigMgr client. It looks like a comment here. This line in the XML file will flip your old site over to the new site, and that is the option name site reassign option. Leave that as value 1. Excellent. Thank you for the tip, sir.
All right. Anything else out there? Don't see any. Any more questions or comments? But we have almost 45 minutes to spare, so if you have any questions, let us know.
No letting us off too easy today. Just making sure I get these links here.
All right, then.
I just love this banner of this blog post.
Well, pretty much AI generated to me, so.
I think just all the bright colors. I'm easily amused, Johan.
Yep.
So last night you were asking me if I got the new Win32 app logs on any of my clients. Did you happen to see them pop up on yours yet?
No, I only spot checked one machine, and that one had recently installed some applications just the other day, but that machine did not have the new log files yet on it. So it could be that it's a slow rollout, or not sure what's going on there exactly, or if it requires a new application being created. But I did not have them on the first test machine that I looked at.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. You have to keep me posted on when you finally see those. I'm surprised you haven't yet.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I had a couple other questions come in here. Matt is asking any tips about enrolling devices from AD to Intune. That actually does remind me. Hold on. Matt pointed me to a fantastic blog post that was posted on Monday from Andrew Taylor.
Yeah.
Around enrolling Windows devices into Intune. So credit to Matt for pointing this out. I forgot to put this on the list for today. Andrew goes through a number of scenarios and things to look out for when you are enrolling devices. Whether if we go up to the top here, you can see in the index, whether you're going to enroll through GPO or you're going to enroll through autopilot or provisioning package, all of these different methods that we have available to us. Really a comprehensive post on how you can configure these methods, why you may or may not want to use some of them, and a little bit of troubleshooting in here as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Good stuff.
Yeah. Things to look out for, though, in terms of actually enrolling. The common ones, right? The things that you and I might find obvious, but we're all going to run into. Make sure your licenses are out there and assigned to the proper users. Make sure, Andrew put right here at the top of this blog post, make sure your MDM scope is set to either all, if you want everyone in your organization to be able to enroll, or some. Set that to a group of users that you know has an Intune license and will be able to enroll. Those are two very common pitfalls. I've been guilty of them myself many times.
Same here.
So I think those would be my first those would be my two big tips. And I think I can probably speak for Johan that those would be two of his as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know also if you decide to go the switch over completely, not just keep them in a hybrid mode scenario. But if you go into Legacy Active Directory now and want to go into later, a very reliable option is simply to reimage them and go to that platform that way, because that way you guarantee there is no junk left over on the devices from previous group policies or hundreds of policies that may have been applied over the lifetime of the devices.
Yep.
All right.
So we had a question here about delivery optimization. Can delivery optimization peer-to-peer help devices in the same subnet with app installations?
Well, yes and no. Not with the actual install, but with the download of the content for the install. It makes sure that that is more effective, that it doesn't overload your WAN links or your internet links by allowing just a few devices to download the content rather than having every single device download the content. That assumes that the app that you're trying to install does support, not just support delivery optimization, but support that Microsoft have turned on peering in the backend. A great example of applications that does that are all the Win32 apps in Intune. They will come down and they will peer content. But for example, the Teams application, when it does updates, it's using DO, but it doesn't do peering at all because Microsoft disabled it. Probably good reason for that, but that one has generated a ton of traffic from our customers that I worked with. And there are others that doesn't peer as well. Windows updates, they will typically peer content just fine, except for when Microsoft accidentally flipped on HTTPS downloads a while back and realized, oops, that broke peering, flipped it back. So we're now back to HTTP downloads for that content. But yeah, fun stuff always.
Oh, and there was just a follow-up question here. Would that work during provisioning?
It will. I'm assuming you're referring to autopilot provisioning, but yes, if you have Win32 apps coming down and you do enroll in other devices in an office type location, then they will peer content to each other. You can also spin up local cache servers if you have really large offices and point the devices to them. The trick is to get the policy to the device in a timely fashion so that the policy is there when devices are being available. Somewhat easier to do with the new autopilot configuration that's available for Windows 11 clients. But of course, if you have control over the imaging process, you can inject keys like that into the registry so that when the device boots up, it already knows it's supposed to use a cache server. Other options is to set that in scope options to have the ESP try to hand out that information through when assigning IP addresses.
All right. Yeah. Great stuff. Benny is asking, where do we save the links for office hours?
Well, if you kindly open up our YouTube channel, Andrew, since you have the screen shared.
I think I can do that.
Yeah, ViaMonstra is not too many that has that in the name. But if you go to live there and just pick any of the older ones and scroll down a little bit, that's where we share the links. So they don't go in there right away. We usually do it in the evening later or tomorrow morning, but they get set there eventually.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Matt had a follow-up question here around enrollment. So even after looking at some of those issues on licensing, making sure that we have MDM scope set properly, there are still some errors here and there about enrolling devices. Absolutely. That's when you can start to do a bit of deep diving, checking the status of the device joining to Entra through the ds-reg command. You may have to go a little bit further and whack the device with a hammer, not physically, of course, but the ds-reg command leave and rejoin. If you are in a hybrid scenario, um, and you are doing the enrollment through group policy, you may need to do a GP update force. You could have corrupt group policy on a device that could be causing these enrollment errors. There are so many things that could be going wrong. And I know Matt and I have had the opportunity to discuss a few of them, thankfully, but there's so many moving parts and pieces. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so Microsoft had a fairly lengthy article on troubleshooting enrollment issues
Mhm.
from Intune with some tips and tricks on how to find them and how to mitigate them. So the most common errors you will find here and recommendations on the mitigations to fix them. So if you haven't stumbled across this blog post, this documentation here, I recommend review that one. And then we also have from our friend Matthias, we have showcased this a few times, but over at MS Endpoint Manager, not that post, I've been visiting it many times, it looked like, but in solutions that we have the Intune debug toolkit that also has a bit of uh, analytics and scripts you can run to help you troubleshoot some of these scenarios. So that's a good one as well. And then, of course, we have some native functionality built into the Intune client to collect log files and event logs and other things. Your number one friend in terms of enrollment issues in the event log is going to be the following. If you go to the event log and wait very patiently while it's expanding, very patiently while it's expanding.
Of course.
So down here you have the device management diagnostics provider here. This one can also provide you with insights on why an enrollment may or may not work, especially in the admin part here. So let's see what else. Well, we have the Sync ML viewer from Oliver Kieselbrach. Showcased that a few times. This is, I believe, the latest version. But this tools also has ready-made shortcuts over to common runs of the M diagnostics tools in Windows. So, for example, the one for enrollment and device provisioning. So, plenty of options available. See if I can get the link to that one. Why did he post this link? There we go. That's the one. So, saving that one as well. So plenty of tools available, but it is a bit of a challenge to some to troubleshoot some of these enrollment issues. I know Rudy Ohms had a few as well. He's been posting primarily around certificate issues with enrollment. Let's see if I can find those. Yeah, basically go to his blog and search for enrollment, and you'll find some inspiration for troubleshooting as well. Here's an example from a few years back, or 2 years back. Yeah, I can see he is also an avid user of AI to generate images for his blog posts.
Indeed. All right, so hopefully that's a nice collection of what we can do in order to look at some issues when we inevitably have trouble enrolling a device. It is inevitable.
Yeah.
All right. And I just saw, I was excited to see this. So Amir has an update for us. The last couple of weeks, he's been fighting with ESP, not necessarily picking up company portal on some devices.
Yeah.
As it turned out, Intune wiped devices will retain their company portal app. So ESP won't install it if it's already installed. This is not the case if I reset the device locally, hence the different ESP numbers. I also read in another one of Rudy's company portal related blogs that some of the dependencies might get erased with the wipe, and ESP won't reinstall them if it skips the whole app altogether. Thinking of running an uninstall company portal script first to make sure ESP will reinstall it in full afterward. But so far, company portal's been working fine, regardless of if it gets installed by ESP or not. Have we had any experience with this, and do we think an uninstall is still necessary?
No, nothing from my end, but it's a great finding nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Amir, I know you've been fighting this one with for a few weeks, so I'm happy to hear that you've got some movement on it. Um, I wasn't aware of that, and so I haven't had any experience with it. I think if it's working fine, my thought would be maybe the uninstall is not necessary. Um, but if you start to run into inconsistencies or anything like that, maybe give that another look. Never hurts to have a plan B.
or C F12, boom,
Exactly.
remove the device, back in business.
Yep. No, thank you for sharing, though, Amir. That's fantastic. All right. So we've got another question over here on YouTube. Our org has moved a few ConfigMgr managed servers to AWS. If we install the client with CCM always INF equals 1, do we need to worry with boundaries for these devices? The goal would be avoid poking all the individual holes into the firewall.
I mean, you still need. I mean, the client installation you can always convince where the management point is because you can hard code it on the installation command line for it. But boundaries and boundary groups are used for other stuff as well, not just defining the initial management point, and that is also for distribution points to download content, for state migration point, for doing refresh and replace scenarios, and also the software update point if you're using that for that. So I would definitely recommend, no matter where your site server happen to be at, if they have a config manager client, pretty much everything with a config manager client should have a boundary group assigned to them. That reduces a lot of issues for that part, unless you happen to use a cloud management gateway. Then you don't have to worry about that in the same extent, because clients will detect that I'm on internet, so probably should contact that one. But today, I mean, I was running a class this morning, a SQL class, and we spent some time on just figuring out. I can actually show those. I think I still have it open on my machine. Let's see. Must have been either this little friend. Nope, that was the backup. Here then. Yeah, we were looking for machines that was either missing boundary groups. I was lucky I didn't have any, but also for machines that was part of multiple boundary groups, and I happened to have one that did. In this case, it was not too bad because it was actually a VPN client coming in. But in general, if life is good, a client is only a member of one boundary group and gets the resources that are assigned to that boundary group. But yeah, these are SQL queries I got from SCON's quite popular report to inventory or report on inventoried boundary group assignments. So there's a boundary group cache property or WMI path you can inventory, and then you can report on that type of information. So yeah, I do recommend to have it.
Awesome. There was a follow up comment here while you were discussing that. Just left out the critical part that they are using CMG.
Ah, okay then.
Yep.
Fair and square.
Great tips, though, sir. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. I've got a question from Matt over on YouTube. Have you ever seen an in place upgrade task sequence where, after a successful upgrade and reboot, the sequence just runs super slow, pauses on sections for long periods of time, for example, even empty folders with no actions? It just pauses.
No, can't say I have.
Can't think of a time I've seen that either.
I mean, the SMSTS log file should give you an indication on what's going on, but you would have to review that one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd be surprised to. Well, yeah, I'd be actually very interested to hear what, if you hit an empty folder, if there's something in that log, or if for some reason the log time just skips. It's doing something, and then it skips to the next thing 2 minutes later, or however long it is.
I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is like a way too optimistic bits policy being applied, or something that will just slow down downloads on the devices, or machines having trouble finding content, so they're retrying and retrying and retrying. I had a case a while back, a customer that was using peer cache for their content. And when you do that, ConfigMgr keeps a record on every device that have which content. So when you download stuff in the sequence, ConfigMgr will query the management point every time and try to ask around, okay, this package then, who has it? And then rinse repeat for the next package. And when it gets denied multiple times, that lookup process can take a little bit. It was even worse in the beginning of peer cache, but it's better now since I switched to the fast channel back in 1806 config manager. But yeah, you would have to review that log file. It should give you some information to what's going on.
And there was just a follow-up comment here. The only thing they're doing is the CCM auto start before a reboot, and that's about it that's happening in that sequence.
Yeah.
But I think your advice probably stay the same, right? Take a look at that log.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, indeed.
There was just a follow-up comment here too on the config manager servers in AWS. We distribute content to CMG excluding Windows updates, so wasn't sure if we should have the boundary prefer and associate with the CMG, or just let them figure it out.
Usually you do not have to configure the option to say, preferred cloud content. That is usually when a client is within a boundary group on a corporate network, but you still want them to use the cloud management gateway for content. If a device is truly on internet that does not have access to config manager resources, well, boundaries won't help you there. So it's good. The client is going to realize it's internet and it's going to go to the cloud management gateway. And I just saw the follow-up comment from Matt there. They will review the log file once again. And yeah, Matt, you know where to find us if you come up with something or have further questions. So
Yep.
please let us know. And hey, another 25 minutes just swished by. But we still have time. 18 minutes left. Any questions for us?
We did just have one come in, actually. What is the difference between Microsoft Defender Antivirus and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint in products for software updates?
Well, it comes down to security features, really. Defender for Endpoint is the shiny edition, and Microsoft Defender is what you get for free. It's the Fiat versus Ferrari type from a security point of view.
Yeah, so I think with the difference between those two within the software updates itself, with the standard Defender antivirus, you're going to be getting your definition updates for Defender are going to be coming down that way. You'll also have with the Defender for Endpoint updates, that will have its own set of sensor updates that will come down separately because it identifies things differently than the standalone Defender engine does. So, to Johan's point, if you don't have Defender for Endpoint in your environment, you probably won't need to pull down those updates. If you do, you can pull them down. Alternatively, as many of you have heard from me in the past, take a look and see if your organization is happy with pulling down those definition and sensor updates from the internet rather than through ConfigMgr. Defender AV will get definition updates sometimes multiple times a day. Same with Defender for Endpoint. You can also get those multiple times a day as well.
I mean, Defender for Endpoint, it's more of a basically an DDR type solution, so endpoint and response type solution. I did stumble across an older blog post that kind of I think is worth sharing. This one here, basically, as the name implies, understanding the different versions of Defender, and even though some names may have changed since, the gist of it haven't changed. So, as the author points out here, basically, it is an entire platform. It's there for threat hunting and advanced analytics, and will give you recommendations. Like if I would log into my security portal, I have a few devices onboarded for Defender for Endpoint specifically. And I have purposely crippled a few of those devices where I went in and installed both Adobe Reader and Chrome and some other apps, and then went in to disable their auto updater. And then Defender for Endpoint got all mad at me and started to give me warnings about what's going on. So this is, of course, an entire solution rather than just an antivirus client running on the device. But this is where you have a lot of fun stuff that you can look into in your environment. So, a lot of fun stuff.
Oh, yes.
Here would be the list of recommendations, for example, where you can see that, yeah, I have a few devices I need to upgrade Notepad and 7-zip and probably a few recommendations on Chrome and Adobe Reader somewhere down here also. But long story short, this is a fairly large platform, and that's what you're paying for when you buy either Defender for Endpoint separately, or you buy it like we did as part of the Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5 bundle of licenses. So in our environment, or in one of our tenants, we have just for demo and training purposes, we bought a few licenses to have them available. Down in the building here, it's a little bit sluggish at the moment, but so this one here, that's the one that gives us Defender for Endpoint. And I know you bought some in your lab too, Andrew, the E5 ones.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'll definitely share that link. And yeah.
Yeah, you can get some pretty cool stuff out of this. I mean, it's interesting to see. You really you're starting to get into infosec type of stuff here, but this platform shows some really interesting things. People trying to, depending on how you implement it, you can find in Defender people trying to enumerate highly privileged groups in Active Directory and these vulnerability scans that Johan's showing. Fantastic. This is super helpful if you're implementing security baselines or if you're implementing attack surface reduction rules in your environment. There are some great reports that show how devices are configured for each one of those rules. There's the advanced hunting feature in here that allows you to go in and do some Custo queries and see when those ASR rules are getting triggered and who's logging in, who's authenticating to different devices. And it's tons of information. I could probably bumble about how much information you could get for another hour.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good comment coming up here on YouTube, and that was just the fact that the inventory that you get from here is actually pretty good compared to the inventory you get from Intune for software. Now, Microsoft is working on extending that or working on that, but this one has always been better at software inventory. So, yeah, good stuff.
Definitely.
And even some BIOS information. We showcased that a few times. If you go to the inventory, now I don't have any physical devices enrolled anymore, only a few virtual machines. But uh, in the hardware and firmware node, this is where you get, if you have BIOSes that are at risk, it will tell you if you have BIOSes that are at risk or BIOS versions that are at risk.
Yep.
So good stuff.
All right. Any thoughts on mapping and accessing network drives on Entra-only devices? I'm sure Microsoft would say move them to SharePoint, but I think if I pitch that to my org, their response would be less than optimal. Somebody had... There's a remediation out there. At least one that I'm thinking. I'm sure there are many, but... Oh, our friend Mr. T-Bone. He's got a remediation for drive mapping.
Ah, Mr. Torbjörn.
Yes.
Fellow Swede.
I
You have it
noticed
up on your screen?
I do, and I noticed the .se domain name there.
Yeah.
So there is a drive mapping remediation script here. That looks like it's pretty recent too, 10 months ago. So maybe give this a try. I've not tested this myself, but maybe give this a try. One thing that I would always look at to make this more seamless, especially if you are rolling out Windows Hello for Business in your organization, would recommend rolling out Cloud Trust as well in your Active Directory domain, because then your users, so long as their uh, identities are synced from on-prem to Entra, will basically get a very smooth, simple single sign-on, for lack of a better term, into these drives. So this would be one, and actually, I have a blog post for that as well. I believe John Towles is the one that I followed or provided to somebody recently. Let me find John's blog post on that. I think I've got that. Yes, right here. So if you haven't rolled out Cloud Trust in your org, would recommend doing that. The experience is so much better. I'm sure many of you have seen, been on an Entra joined device or even a hybrid Entra joined device that you've signed in with a PIN or biometrics or something like that, and you get that little toast notification in the corner that says, we need you to log in with your most recent password. Which you could do. You can lock your screen and sign in with the password, and it should authenticate you in fully. Cloud Trust will remove the need. Cloud Trust with Windows Hello for Business will remove the need for that additional password login if you've logged in with a PIN or biometrics. It's actually very slick. So those would be the two things that I would look out for. If there's another remediation that we come across, I'll be sure to share it as well. Um, but yeah, I just appreciate the question, because I think a lot of folks get the sense that people don't map network drives anymore. And I find more and more that that's not true. As it turns out, every single organization hasn't fully moved to cloud native, especially in that regard. We're still doing a lot of connections to our on-prem storage. Um, are you still seeing quite a bit of that as well, Johan?
Indeed, indeed. I was just troubleshooting my internet link at the same time. I was noticing it was spiking pretty quickly, and when I looked into who was using the most of it, it turns out that our 10-year-old gamer apparently is downloading an update to one of his games. So it was using like 95% of my internet link here.
Time for some QoS policies on the network.
I'll say so. It usually doesn't happen very often, but of course it did the timing right now. But
Of course.
so far the link has been holding up. But I lost your audio for a little bit and like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Andrew's just bumbling about network drives. We'll also share, Rudy's got a blog post around this as well, because I noticed Damon mentioned here in the comments on YouTube that you could use an ADML, and Rudy kind of goes into that as well. And yeah, another comment here, it's when you have to map different drives at different locations that it gets interesting. Absolutely. And the thing is, the way that these are used at different organizations, I mean, they can be all over the place, right? It's usually not as simple as just, map the G drive for everybody in the organization, and the G drive is the same for everyone, at least in my experience.
Absolutely.
So I'll make sure to share at least these 3 posts here. At the very least, I think they're fantastic inspiration for getting this going, if that's something that you've got to work with. Willy Wonka and the Drive Letter Factory. That's
Sounds like Rudy. Yeah.
yeah. He's got some great titles, but that might be up there with one of my favorites. Although I like that too, the Windows Hello for Business easy button. We like easy buttons.
Yeah.
Mr. T-Bone.
I'm just copying out the links from the Defender comparison also, so we have that one.
Cool.
Are there any other questions out there? We still have a whooping 2 minutes at our disposal here. And it looks like I got my internet link back for a moment at least.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. But I do not see any other questions, and I don't think we missed one.
One just came in. Would you happen to have a PowerShell script that can collect DO results from multiple devices?
Well, I have been blogging a bit about how to enumerate the log files, etc. But a shameless plug there would be to head over to pointsoftware.com and look at the dashboards what we have, because we visualize all that traffic in real time from all your devices, so you can see exactly what's going on and where. So we have an agent that you run on every device that will basically harvest or inventory all the DO downloads that you can leverage and then use. But there is nothing that prevents you from parse the event log that or the so Delivery Optimization has its own event log or tracing log. Problem is that one is changing from Windows version, and parsing that is a royal pain. The PowerShell script that Trevor Jones put together, for example, it's like 200 lines just to parse event log entries. So it's doable. But I mean, can you open up the Windows Update for Business report?
Yes, absolutely. It's almost like you knew that I had this configured.
Well, I saw it yesterday.
Oh, that's the secret. And I have a feeling I know you, or I have a feeling I know you're going to where you're going to direct me. Good Lord, I can't talk anymore today.
It's been a long day. Okay.
Is this where you wanted me to go?
Yes.
All right.
So this report gives you some insight. We have our friends over at MS Endpoint Manager. They have some workspaces that is good as well for information. But you can dive into data and see what's going on in your environment this way. So yeah, a bit sluggish to load here, but
yeah, that's weird. And a follow-up comment there. Hope to join the PowerShell course in October. We hope to have you there.
Yeah, awesome. See you there.
Awesome.
It must be the PowerShell for ConfigMgr and Intune admins. That's a fun one.
Oh yeah, very fun instructors for that one too, I must say.
Biased a little bit, maybe.
Just a little.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. We are up on time here. Thank you so much for joining. We definitely hope to see you again next week. But until then, have a good one and stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.